Hello, and welcome to Why I Love Warhammer, the series where I go into an unscripted ramble about why I love something in this hobby. And on this episode, we're just going to go through my favourite model in every faction, every army in 40k, my favourite model in that range. This isn't in a rank order of my favourite armies, they've just been loosely grouped as like Xenos, Chaos, Imperial, and there are I also group together models that the Games Workshop Warhammer guys group together themselves because it just seemed reasonable to do it that way. It does, however, mean that the Aeldari, Ynnari, and Harlequins have all been lumped together. And I might have forgotten to include Genestealer cults in this list, but if I have, it's because they're Brood Brothers, and so my favourite Genestealer cult model is also my favourite Imperial Guard model. Just, pink. So, with that, oh, and if you want to like this video when you finish watching it, if you do like it, I'd really like that. If you want to subscribe for more kind of positivity and tomfoolery, that would be amazing as well. I've got a Patreon in the description. And if you want to leave a comment about your favourite model for any faction or every faction, doesn't have to just be 40k. You could do Age of Sigmar, Middle Earth, Necromunda, Blood Bowl. Just talk about your favourite models in the comments because there are so many good models. The other thing I'll point out is that that there will be models that I've included here where I do like a different model more, but that other model I like more is from a different range. So, for example, I've not included the Canoptek Wraiths in this list because there is a Necron model I like more than Canoptek Wraiths, but I do like the Canoptek Wraiths more than I like my pick for the Grey Knights. But that's kind of where I'm at. Okay, rambling intro is done and out of the way. Hormagaunts for the Tyranids. I really like these guys. It was a close one between the Hormagaunts, Termagaunts, and the Carnifex, because I think they're all brilliant models. I ended up thinking these Hormagaunts edged out a little bit just because they've got claws rather than growing a gun, and they are very hoardy. I feel like it's a distinct power move to just like slide a load of models across the table, and in doing that, or you're having a movement tray, just take out a movement tray when your opponent is fielding units of like 5s, and here's my movement tray for 20, 30 models. It's just a power move which I really enjoy. And the Hormagaunts with these claw weapons, it feels more organic, but it also feels scarier to the opponent that like these are about to come and they've got huge scything talons, which I just think is brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant. Love it. And with these new sculpts they did for them as for the launch of 10th edition, they are just really dynamic, and it seems like they're better weighted. The old ones used to topple over a lot, but I think these are very well done, and yeah, just really fun models. And so like they I won't say they look like a Deinonychus. They don't look like the Velociraptors from Jurassic Park, but they have that energy, and that's important. The energy a model gives off, and it gives Deinonychus energy. So very happy about these models. Yeah, so this is my favourite model in the Tyranid range. I nearly separated out the auxiliaries for the Tau because my love for the Kroot can't be understated. My love for the Vespids can't be understated. There are a million, there are as many cool models in the Tau range as there are models in the Tau range. Like, even the ones that are in dire need of an update, I still think look brilliant. Like, there are no bad models in the Tau range as far as I'm concerned. It was tough to pick a favourite. But ultimately, between Kroot and drones. Yeah, Kroot and drones are the only two where I've ever tried to make a list of full 2,000 point army consisting of like 98% that. And so I really wanted to make a list of just drones. It was technically feasible in 8th edition and pre 9th edition codex for Tau. They've dialed back on that a lot, but I still think that drones are really cool. And I have to phrase this very carefully. Solely in the context of this escapist tabletop miniatures game that we all play, that is a satirical take on warfare. I think drones are a really fun, cool, and effective way of dealing warfare. And please do not take those words out of the context of this sci-fi fantasy game. I think these drones are really cool. I think that they're really effective and they've got a good placement in the game, and I wish I could field more of them. I think they're really cool, and they have proper flying stats, the stick that goes into a base. I would love to be able to do a full 2,000 point army, or even a 1,000 point army of just drones. I think that'd be really fun to paint up and like build, paint, assemble onto their flying stands, and just take to the field with all of these flyers. Beautiful. And so yeah, I think as much as I would happily talk about how much I love the Kroot for a long time, for me the drones do edge out the Kroot by just a hair, making the Tau drones my favourite models in the Tau range. For the Orks, it's the Stomper. And I know Orks are typically a horde army. There are a load of different ways to play Orks. I always think of it as like a triangle between the hordes of boys, the hyper elite big contraptions, and the kind of vehicles and beast snagger tribes, and kind of where you put your orc army is somewhere in the triangle between the three. But the Stomper is such a large model, and it's so ramshackle, and it just feels like so much of what the orcs are about is encapsulated by the Stomper. And I just think it's a phenomenal sculpt. It's a really as much as a ramshackle scrap machine can be beautiful, this is beautiful to me. And if I could find one that, for a price I could financially justify to myself, I would definitely pick one up, because it would be so brilliant to own. Even if I could just get the top half and I could like assemble the bottom half myself with out of like card and scraps and cans of custard, I would, because that would feel very pure, very true to being classically orky. For the Necrons, it's the Nightbringer. There was a tough competition. I love Canoptek Scarabs. I love the Canoptek Wraiths. The Canoptek Doomstalker nearly made the list here. Warriors, Monolith, both old and new. To be honest, the only model in the entire Necron range that wasn't a contender for my favourite model was the Shard of the Void Dragon, which I just don't think looks dragony enough. But I nearly picked the Obelisk just to be contrarian. But I love the Nightbringer. It looks like the Grim Reaper. This is such a cool model. It's riding a Scarab. It's got a cool scythe. It's a really simple colour scheme as well. It feels ethereal. And it's just a beautiful model. And also, I can never forget its appearance in Dawn of War Dark Crusade, where it was like a buff you'd apply to your lord. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful model. And if they ever do a resculpt of it, I hope it can keep the majesty and energy that this one gives off. Phenomenal model. I've loved the Nightbringer since 4th edition, and I still love it to this day. There was a lot of very tough competition for my favourite model. I think maybe if the Warriors still had the green rods, they might have edged it out, but as it stands, the Nightbringer is my favourite model in the whole is my favourite model in my favourite army, which is a huge step. It's a huge thing. The Leagues of Votann, it's this guy, and it's not for the character. It's for the Ironkin, the Men of Iron who surround him. I love the Men of Iron, Ironkin. I think they're beautiful looking models. I love the fishbowl domes. They look like classic Mysterio from Spider-Man. I love AI as a story. I think that as a concept and like a narrative device to center a character around, from so much of the Mass Effect trilogy to Lieutenant Data in Star Trek to it took to 40k, where the whole Men of Iron was a huge controversial thing in the history of the setting. There's something really beautiful to me about AI, how it's implemented in stories. Fun fact: for a while, I was doing a project with in an old job regarding the use of kind of machine learning AI, ChatGPTs, into how we could implement that into the workplace. So I ended up doing a lot of research about AI in the modern, in the contemporary sense of the term. And I think part of why I loved doing that so much was because of my fascination and obsession with science fiction AIs. The Drukhari, it's the Ravager. I love the boats. I think they're really cool. Space, they are dark elf space pirates, and I love pirates, so that was already a huge step up for me. It's the Cabalite warriors who are piloting it, and the Cabalite warriors are my favourite infantry in the Drukhari range. I love the blade nature of this as well. Like all of the bits hanging off the end, they're spiky. It feels so true to character for the Drukhari, and it's just a really beautiful model. And they're surprisingly big as well, and I think it's just really nice. Definitely, like, every time I construct my fantasy Drukhari list, I'm always running as many of these as I possibly can because they're just such phenomenal sculpts to me. And also the way they pilot them, it's a neat thing with the kind of the Aeldari factions is they always have, like, as much as they drift culturally in the lore, the way they pilot stuff, like how they look, how they pose, how they aim, is consistent all the time. And I think that's really important and underrated. It's like a small touch that really adds a lot of character and uniformity with the Aeldari braces and factions in 40k. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. Also, I didn't even notice this until I'd already started recording. There's a spike on this ship which has like two different sizes of skull and a crude skull. And again, it just shows the range of factions in the setting and the color scheme they use for like the default Drukhari is one I really enjoy. So yeah, this boat is definitely my favorite model in the Drukhari range. If the old beasts were still in the range, like the Razorwing Flocks, I think those might edge this one out. But there's a lot of stiff competition in the Drukhari range because they have got some really, really cool models. Like the Homunculus, I think, is really interesting as a model as well. The other boat, the troop transport one, again. The Cabalite Warriors, I just nearly put on this list because I just think they look really cool. I think I prefer the 3rd edition ones. They seemed a bit spikier, but yeah, overall, I couldn't not pick the big pirate ship with blades. The Solitaire, it was the model this model more than I think anything else made me want to start Harlequins, and of everything the Aeldari have to offer. The Shadow Seer here the Shadowseer just is my favourite model in the Harlequins range, and it's my favourite model in the whole of the Aeldari range. It's so fun to paint. The checkerboards are a challenge. I loved painting the spiral down the staff. I think they're really fascinating models. I love the masked face they've got. I think it's just really cool. And yeah, as much as like I could have said, oh, my favourite model in the Yinoi range is Yvrain, and my favourite model in the non-Harlequins Aeldari range is either like it's probably Eldar Guardians probably. But I do like the Shadowseer more than any of the other models in the other Eldari things. Like maybe if Yvrain's cat was sold separately, it would have been a slightly stiffer competition. But even then, I think the Shadowseer here is just my favourite model in the whole of the Aeldari range. Okay, World Eaters, Khorne Lord of Skulls. Though again, I think this was good. It was second place for me is tied between the Lord Invocatus and Angron himself, because I just think they're both really, really cool models that I nearly put on this for my favourite. But I couldn't not put in the Lord of Skulls. I just think it's a really cool model. I think it, I love the Lords of War. I think they're just, I like it's a huge model. It's got massive kind of stomach gun, like the rejected Teletubby. I think that all the skulls on it really lives up to its name. I feel like it's an absolute beast. Like building and painting this thing would be phenomenal. And to be honest, with the guns it has, I think it would make for a really good kind of backline fire support for a World Eaters army. They're a very melee focused army. So having this guy in your back line, just firing across the battlefield while your melee units march on up, I think would be really fascinating and just a terrifying thing. Imagine bringing this thing out. You go to your friendly local game store, you play the local gaming group, and you bust out Khorne Lord of Skulls. Phenomenal. And it's just got it's got that old chaos sensibility to it as well, with the way it's been designed, and I just think it's a beautiful model, and it's got a real sense of believability to it as well. Like you can believe this thing charging up the battlefield like the parody of a centaur that it is. Khorne of Skulls is just the Lord of Skulls is such a good model, and yeah, my favourite from the World Eaters range. Mutalith Vortex Beast from the Thousand Suns range. I actually bought a purple contrast paint just to try and paint one of these up. I think it is one that I love that sun on its back. I think the tentacles are very kind of. It's got of course, it gives Cthulhu vibes. It walks like a gorilla. It's got it's got the double tails like a chimera. I just think this would be so much fun to paint up. And it's a beast on the tabletop as well at the time of recording. It's a terrifying model to come up against. And I don't think, between every army I've ever played as, I don't think I've ever taken down the Mutalith Vortex Beast. I've been able to play around it. I've been able to have it not deal as much damage to me. I've been able to avoid it. But I've never actually managed to take one down. And that's just, it speaks to the power of the model. And I just think painting this thing up would be an absolute dream. Such a cool model. I'm surprised we don't see it at more painting awards. I feel like more Golden Demon winners should have entered with this, and more Golden Demon judges should give this far more props. Because one of these painted well, treat. The Blight Hauler for the Death Guard. I didn't think this would be my favourite model. When I started making YouTube videos, taking this YouTube game a bit more seriously, trying to put out regular content, I don't think I would have ever suggested that this was my favourite model in the Death Guard range. The reason I realised this was my favourite model in the Death Guard range was just after I put out the video about why I love the Death Guard. I went to visit my parents, and they had this video on because my family watch my videos. Thank you very much. Shout out to my family. And then I ended up just talking to my dad about this one model for 15 minutes on its own. And I didn't have anything constructive to say, just how much I really loved it, how much I think it looks cool, how I love the mortar shell, the kind of the way it looks like its skin that's kind of stretched over the demon engine, how I love this kind of terrifying cow clearer. If those things aren't called cow clearers, please let me know in a comment, because I want a nicer name for them. But yeah, I ended up talking like 15 minutes about why I love this one model. I repeated myself a lot. I did a lot of stammering, more than I do in a regular upload. And yeah, I realized it was the model I could talk about the most, even if it wasn't in a structured way. I think it's a really phenomenal model, and so now when I make a fantasy Death Guard list, my starting point is 3 of these. Okay. For the regular Chaos Space Marines, the Defiler. It was the model that made me want to play Chaos Space Marines back in 4th edition. It's a giant robot crab. I love robots. I love giant things. I love crabs. Of course I like giant things. I'm 5'5". I've got to compensate for something in my life. I love the general design of it. I love the flail bale mace thing. I love the way it moves. If you build it as per the instructions, it will actually walk. And huge gun. It just in the center. It just brings back these memories I've got from playing Warhammer 40,000 back in 4th edition, where I'd use that big gun, 72-inch range across the entire battlefield, annihilating my opponent's Kroot. And then but they wouldn't all be destroyed, but then they'd fail their morale check and jump off the table and counter slain. Brilliant times. It's the head that this one uses isn't the head I put on mine. I have the less horned head. But overall, this is just such a phenomenal model to me. I hope it never gets retired. I hope it never gets updated, because this is just perfect to me. This is, even though the Nightbringer was my favourite model for my favourite faction, this model, the Chaos Defiler, is my favourite model in the entire setting. And not just my favourite, I think this is actually my favourite model that Warhammer produces, that Games Workshop make. It is, yeah, there is no model I think I prefer to this guy. And there's some stiff competition. There's everything from this list, the Canoptech unit from the Necrons, there's the whole of Blood Bowl, there's that gorgeous frog from the Amazon team in Blood Bowl was star player, there's the entire Daughters of Cain range, there are all the dragons from the Stormcast Eternals range, there's, like I say, the whole of Middle Earth, there's the Balrog, all of the fortifications, there's every Primarch, every Demon Primarch, everything from the Horus Heresy, all of the Specialist games, everything from Adeptus Titanicus / Legions Imperialis, even the squat land train from way back when that I still hope they're going to bring back at some point. I prefer the Chaos Defiler to all of them. If this were in some kind of ranked order, this would be number 1 as my absolute favourite model in the whole setting. I cannot convey how much I love the Chaos Defiler enough. I genuinely spent lunch breaks at school looking at this thing in a White Dwarf magazine. And this was before my voice broke, so I can't impersonate what I would say, because what I would say was I wanted a Defiler. And it had a specific rhythm, and it was a specific note that I can't hit anymore, because I was obsessed with this thing from the day I saw it. I got it, I want to say I got it for Christmas one year, and in my memory of that day, I didn't open more presents for hours because I'd gotten super glue for Christmas as like a different present, and then I was given the Chaos Defiler, and I built it under the Christmas tree. That's the vivid memory I have from Christmas that year. I want to say at Christmas like 2006, 2007. I think it was Christmas 2007 I got this model. And I built it under the Christmas tree. That's what I remember because I was so excited to get this model. And yeah, it's my absolute favourite model in the entire Warhammer range. Like, I don't know how long I've been talking about this one model. If I remember to, I'll put an annotation or something just to say how long I've ended up talking about this one model because it's just perfect to me. It is just phenomenal. And I'm going to have to move on before this just becomes me talking for an hour, repeating the same things over and over again about one model. Okay. Chaos Knights, the army I would take to tournaments. This, I think, yeah, this was the second video I did for this channel, aside from the channel trailer. The Knight Despoiler for the Chaos Knights is my favourite of those, and most of that's because of just how customizable it is. Whereas the Imperial Knights, like every weapon combination, it seems, is its own independent unit. For the Chaos Knights, it's here is your Knight Despoiler, and now here is a textbook of all the different ways you can build it. And also, because all my Chaos Knights, bar my first few Armigers and my Tyrants are fully magnetized, taking out a Knight Despoiler, it feels very it feels very kind of wholesome to kind of assemble its weapons after it's taken out of the box, because their magnets snap together with a really satisfying click, and you can kind of go, right arm, left arm, top weapons thing, the exactly what that's being loaded with, separate, and then it's just a fun model to just do that very tactically with. It's just a very, very fun model to just assemble. Also, it's a Chaos Knight, so the little dude on the side there, I've just never bothered with him. I think he's fully contained, including his base, in like a box of sprue I have in my airing cupboard, in front of the boiler. I've never bothered with him. He's not got a stat line for the Chaos Knight, so I just never bothered with him. It's the Knight Despoiler. That's what I love, and favourite model in the Chaos Knight range. It's always a shame I can never find a good place for it in one of my lists, because Chaos Knights are more about the war dogs than they are about the big guys. But I love the Knight Despoiler. I wish I could include him in more lists. Nurgling from the Chaos Demons. I nearly went and separated out the 4 Chaos Gods for their demons, but it's one codex, it's one set of index cards. I went one demon, and it's Nurglings. They are fun, they are cute, they are mischievous, they've got tons of personality. I feel like when they decided to use Nurglings as the base decorations for the merchandise, that was the correct choice of demon model to do that with. I just think they're really good fun, and yeah, there's just a lot of personality to them, and I wish I could include more. The Leman Russ, my favourite Genestealer Cults model and my favourite Imperial Guard model. I have 12 Leman Russ tanks. They are about 3 inches above where my green screen ends. I think it's just a really cool classic tank. I think they're fun. I think the Armoured Company idea, which I actually got the idea from Kirioth on YouTube, who I respect enormously and really enjoy his content. And so when he came out with the Armoured Company, I thought, oh my god, I need to do this exact idea, but make it Genestealer cults. So I misread the rules around Brood Brothers and Genestealer cults, which is why I ended up with 12 rather than, I think you're allowed a maximum of 3 in an actual 2,000 point list. But I didn't realise that at the time. Ended up getting 12. I just think they're really fun. I love the range of weapons you can put on them, but I love kind of that classic nature of them. Also, they don't have bases, and when a model doesn't have a base, you don't have to do any basing on it. And basing is my least favourite part about physically building models. So why wouldn't I want an army which have no bases? Yeah, fun model, and yeah, I'm just really happy to have a horde of them. Are they good on the tabletop? Of course not. The problem with any kind of spam tactics of spamming the same thing is if your opponent has a hard counter to it, they'll table you turn 2. But is it fun? Yes, it's great fun. Agents of the Imperium had some tough competition. Really tough competition. Inquisitor Karamazov nearly made the #1 spot, mostly because of his portrayal in text-to-speech device. Jakiro Weaponsmith, he's a monkey. Euclidean Star Striders, I think, are just a fun set. They've got a good dog with them. The 4 assassins I could have gone with. The Coward Assassin as the one who is credited with having slain Comrade Kurz, the Primarch of the Night Lords, nearly made the list. The Eversaw Assassin, specifically the Warhammer Plus Year 1 reward model, was so fun to build and paint that nearly made the list. But Kyria Draxus is definitely my favourite. She's a really cool model. Got an Aeldari gun with a purity seal on it, so she's working with Xenos. She's also got the cool pet dragon thing. I love that, and the fact that she's using Xenos stuff speaks volumes about her character and where she exists and the respect she has within the Ordo Xenos. Her chapter in the Psychic Awakening Pariah book was a really nice thing as well. I thought it was a really compelling story. So yeah, really like Kyria Draxus as a model. And she's, yeah, again, it was a close one. Very close. All of these are close ones. But she is my favourite agent of the Imperium. Kyria Draxus takes the slot. For the Imperial Knights, it was this particular one. I think it's the Knight Warden. It's same deal as the Knight Despoiler for the Chaos Knights, but it's just my favourite weapon combination. It's my favourite kind of hull weapon, these kind of missiles. The hand, I like the hands for the Chaos Knights. I think for Imperial Knights as well. I like the hands for them. I like that you can kind of pose them in ways that you see fit. And I love that Gatling gun thing with the shield. It's just I think it just looks really cool aesthetically. And so this one becomes my favourite Imperial Knight. There's not that much more to say about it. Castellan robots for the Adeptus Mechanicus. They are just incredibly nice models to me. They look like the Robbie the Robot from Lost in Space. There was a Hammer and Bolter episode. And I know it's not a popular opinion, but I like Hammer and Bolter. But there was one episode where it was a Skitarii lady with her Castellan robot going through this planet after a battle. And I found that a very wholesome, but not wholesome. I found a very sympathetic episode, and I welled up. I didn't quite shed a single manly tear, but there was definite mist up here. It's a really lovely episode, and I personally think Castellan robots are cute. Anytime I'm constructing my fantasy ad mech list or dark mech list, my starting point is maxing out Castellan robots. I just think they're really cool, and I can't get enough of them. I'm hoping I've put out my Adeptus Custodes video before this goes live, because if you watch that video, I get very hung up on the Sisters of Silence. And the ones here, I think they're the prosecutors who have the flamers. I just kind of realised how brilliant they are and how terrifying they are. And again, when they've got flamethrowers, it's one step scarier again. And again, before they got incorporated into Custodes, I thought it'd be really cool to make an entirely Sisters of Science list. Um, and then when they did, I thought it was cool to be able to still do just the sisters in a list. And the idea of this legion of psychic blanks, like genuinely no souls, like people in universe are scared of psychic blanks because you are soulless, and having all of them together with one of the most horrific weapons to exist in our world is truly scary. And in a game like this, if you can look at if you can look at a 2-inch tall piece of plastic with a lick of paint and think, I am terrified of this, it is a phenomenal model. And as much as the Custodes are rightfully respected, as much as we've got Trajan Valoris, Constantine Valdor, all the Custodian Guard, the Alaris Terminators, we've got the Blade Master, we've got the beautiful Dreadnought, the Telemann Dreadnought, all the phenomenal Forge World stuff that this army has. I just feel like if I'm given a side-by-side comparison, this squad from the Sisters of Silence and any other model from the Custodes range, I'm gonna prefer this model. And I don't know how much more I can say than that. This model is just, the Sisters of Silence are phenomenal to me, and yeah, when they've got these flamethrowers, there's something about it that I can't not think about. The Immolator, my favourite Sisters of Battle, my favourite Adepta Sororitas model. I put one of these on order. I ordered one at the same time that I ordered the 2023 Red Gobbo model because I just think it would be an absolute dream to paint this thing up. I love the Rhino, so the Rhino chassis is fun, but also painting a stained glass window. That's what I'm really in this for. It's a machine of war with flamethrowers on top, where you get to paint your own stained glass window. And I just think it's beautiful. My plan with the one I've ordered, for the record, is to not build a lot of what goes on top. Like, keep the guns, like keep those flame guns, keep the stained glass window, but not keep anything else because I want to use it as a stage for my 40k band with De Goth Rocker, the Noise Marine guitarist, and a very much kit bashed Space Marine drummer that I made, and just to use to make it as a stage. But the stained glass window is what makes this for me, and it's just such a phenomenal sculpt. Like, whoever designed this thing, give them a raise. If it was a team of people, give them all a raise. And whoever thought of and designed the stained glass window, double their pay, because so brilliant. And yeah, I can't get over how much I like this model. Like, I think every model I've talked about here, I would love to get at some point. But even though I don't have a Sisters army, I do have one of these duty posted at the same time as the Red Gobbo. The Immolator here is a beautiful model, and again, my starting point when I make a Fantasy Sisters list. Space Marines was tricky. I have said repeatedly how much I like the Rhino chassis. I think the Rhino is a phenomenal model. So the problem with trying to name my favourite model for the Space Marines ranges is, for most factions of Space Marines, well, every faction of Space Marines, the question becomes, okay, is there a model in this range that I like more than the Rhino? For if I take my favorites, if I were to paint up a Rhino in Space Wolves colours, is there a model in the Space Wolves range I'd like more than that Rhino? Same for the Ultramarine, same for the Salamander, same for the Raven Guard, same for the White Scars, same for the Imperial Fist, same for the Death Watch, same for all of the Loyalist Space Marines. Do I like it more than the Rhino? And with very few exceptions, the answer is no. I prefer the Rhino to Reboot Gilliman. I prefer the Rhino to Tushan of the Salamanders. I prefer the Rhino to there's quite a few that I prefer the Rhino, and I genuinely wish I could take Rhinos without needing to take troops to be transported by them, because there's a leader unit you can have, at least you could have at one point, which was a Rhino with like a satellite dish on it, and I'd love to have made a list of just Rhinos just charging down. I would call the list Stampede. So yeah, trying to find models I like more than the Rhino was tough. That said, there are Space Marine models I do prefer to the Rhino. Castellan Crow. I just love this model. I think this is a really cool sculpt for him. I like the I own both the previous sculpt and this one. I think that sword is phenomenal, and it was really fun to paint. I think that I love the weaponry, I love the banner, I love his cloak, I love his base, I love the lore around Castellan Crow. I like how that sword is always talking to him, trying to corrupt him. And of all the members of the Grey Knights, they said, Crow, you are the one who is least likely to be convinced by this sword to, fall. This sword is basically the One Ring. I mean, in that it's corrupting and constantly trying to make the bearer kind of fall to its will. It's not doesn't have the plot relevance of the One Ring, but what does? But the sword's phenomenal. I love the model. The other thing this model represents to me is just after this model got revealed to the public, there was a guy on Instagram. I wish I could remember the guy's name, or at least his handle, who is saying that he remembered being given the model to paint, and this was his paint job. And he was given that model to paint like a year and a half, 2 years before it was revealed to us. And I felt that really that to me became my perception of Games Workshop development time. That it's 2 years between we've got a model ready to go and that model being shown to us, the non-staff public. And so, yeah, this model isn't just my favourite model in the Grey Knights range because of its appearance. It's not even just because of its lore. It's definitely not because of its tabletop performance. It's because of what it represents for how my understanding of the company evolved. So yeah, Castellan Crow, my favourite Grey Knight. The Paladins were close. Favourite Space Wolf model, Bjorn. Like I say, there's for the Space Marine chapters, the question was, do I like this more than the Rhino? And actually, the Space Wolves had a few models that I like more than the Rhino. I nearly made Logan Grimnar an honorary Ultramarine just to feature more non-Rhino models for Space Marines. But Logan Grimnar, as amazing as that model is, as much as I love all the wolves, the cyber wolves, Bjorn the Fell-Handed is my favourite. He is the only non-Primarch in 40k that was around during the Horus Heresy, 10,000 years prior. I love his weaponry, his aesthetic, and the fact he's a dreadnought. Dreadnoughts are amazing, and these big blocky walking coffins. So yeah, dreadnoughts are phenomenal, and Bjorn is definitely my favourite dreadnought. And again, it was close, but he's my favourite Space Wolf. Lionel Johnson. I again, the Dark Angels have Lionel Johnson, but almost more important to me for my subjective take on my favourite models in this game, the little robed dudes. I think the little robed guys are brilliant. I love every model that features them. They feel like Jawas to me, but to be honest, given the size of Primarchs, I feel like those guys are more like 5.5 feet tall. Um, and to be honest, given 40k, yeah, I just think, given their role, that dude on our left, his Lionel Johnson's right, his job is to hold a scabbard, right? It's not a bad role to have. Obviously, I'd never want to be on a battlefield in 40k, but being, the left hand of the Primarch, it's not a bad gig. Not a bad gig. So, yeah, between that, the giant skeleton holding a sword in the base is brilliant as well. The sword that Lionel Johnson has, the shield of the Emperor. Also the head options. I like the different head options that he's got. But yeah, Lionel Johnson is just a phenomenal sculpt. And of the 40k Dark Angels, he's got to be my number one pick for them. Azarath for the Blood Angels. I love the wings. I love the axe. But I also love how he seems to represent, at least in my book, the dark side of the Blood Angels. He looks the most vampiric to me. He looks like he's about to succumb to the Black Rage. The stuff that makes the Blood Angels not just the perfect children feel like they're very much exemplified by this guy here. And also the fact that his power, his suit, his armor looks like peeled muscle, which skeeves me out a lot personally. Only enhances the model for what I feel like it represents for the Blood Angels. And then, being covered in purity seals again, the skulls covering his shoulder pad pauldron things. Phenomenal model. And again, it was close because like the Sanguinary and the Sanguinary Guard are also phenomenal models. Mephiston as well was a really cool sculpt. The Martis nearly made it as my favourite, but again, I keep saying, because it's always true, it was very close, but this guy is my favourite Blood Angel. I think if I was including 30k Horus Heresy in this list, the Sanguinius model would probably beat this guy out, but I'm sticking to purely 40k. So this guy is my number one. Okay, this is the final one, which is the Black Templars. High Marshal Helbrecht, I think, is a really cool model. Love this guy. He's got the 2 helpers. I like it when the big model has a couple of helper guys. This guy cleaning the sword was memed very much for a while. There's a guy behind him holding a flamethrower. I love the power pose this guy has. He's not got a tactical rock, he's got a tactical orc. It's a phenomenal sculpt, and it's just, it's so brilliant. Also, I'm not going to lie, black and gold, he feels like he's easier to paint than a normal Black Templar, where it's black but with a white shoulder pad. I've seen the tutorial, it takes like 7 layers of paint to get a good looking white on a black spray base coat. High Marshal Helbrecht does not look like it's going to take as many layers, so that's a definite win in my book. But he's just super imposing. He just emanates power. Phenomenal model. And this model here, I feel like he reminds me just how amazing the Black Templars are. Every time I start thinking why the Black Templars are their own thing, they're a subchapter of the Imperial Fists, High Marshal Helbrecht appears to me to remind me that the Black Templars are phenomenal in their own right. Anyway, I've been talking for 50 minutes, and my throat is getting hoarse, and I need some tea to lubricate my throat, so I am going to call it there. If you've liked this video and watched to the end, thank you very much. If you want to like the video, I'd really appreciate that. If you want to comment down below some of your favourite models in 40k or favourite models for any given faction, please do. If I got any names wrong, please let me know as well. I really don't like being wrong, so please correct me whenever I am. And if you want to subscribe, that would be phenomenal. Yeah, I'd really appreciate it. I've got a Patreon in the description if you want to check that out as well. I do have rewards and a couple of joke tiers as well that I'd never expect anyone to ever contribute for. But yeah, I've got a few. Yeah, I've got some pretty standard tier rewards. And yeah, and if you want to share this video with any friends, I'd really appreciate that as well. With that, I hope you're having a really good day, and until next time, have a good one.